Hello and welcome to this session about food hygiene and this is aimed at domiciliary home care. So my name is Stephen Davis, I'm the Registered Manager and I'm going to just run through some basic principles of good food safety when providing care in people's homes. So the aim of this session is to cover some of the legislation. We're going to look at some of the hazards associated with it. We'll be able to define how food poisoning is caused. You'll look at some of the basic food hygiene techniques and why they're important to follow. You'll know some of the basic food techniques and when to use them. You'll be aware of how to store food safely, and we'll talk about how to prepare and cook food. So let's start off by looking at legislation, and again you can see there's a huge amount of legislation that covers preparing food and fluid for people. We have the Health and Social Care Acts of 2008, down to the Food Safety Act 2019, down at the bottom we have the EU regulations as well. So who's our vulnerable groups? Our vulnerable groups are the normal vulnerable groups in society that are susceptible to viruses and bacteria. So this includes babies, young people, pregnant women, older people, ill people, and people with weak immune systems. So what are microorganisms? Again, we have bacteria, and the way that the bacteria works is it starts off as one cell, they double, so that becomes 2, they become 4, 4 become 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32, and so on. It takes just 20 minutes for one bacteria to turn into 3 million bacteria, and that's enough to cause food poisoning. And you can fit 3 million bacteria on a pinhead. We then got viruses that spread, and then fungi and moulds. And we know that not all moulds are dangerous because we have things such as blue cheeses, but it's the other moulds where they're a little bit furrier and they release the pathogens and stuff in the air which can cause food spoilage. So what can contaminate in a kitchen? Now remember, we're going into people's homes and not commercial areas. The problem with that, it brings problems around choice, capacity, and maybe people are making unwise choices. So we can't instruct people to scrub their homes as clean as a kitchen, but we do need to be insistent that they have an area in their kitchen which is safe to prepare food. So again, we shouldn't have any loose objects in the kitchen. We should avoid dirty equipment. We try to avoid tea towels and dishcloths because again, they're normally full of bacteria because we know they've been sitting there for some time. You may have chemicals, so let's go back to health and safety and think about COSH. There may be poisonous plants, so again we shouldn't have plants or anything in the kitchen. I know they look nice, but let's try and get those out of the kitchen. And again, some of the plants can then attract fruit flies and other things into the kitchen. We've got our own hair, so let's go back to our basic infection control procedures. Hair should be tied back. Nail varnish can chip off. False nails can fall in. Plasters could come off and land into food. Jewellery could drop stones and things into food, and again other wrapping materials. So the reality is there are lots of contaminants in the kitchen when preparing and us working in a food safety area. So it's important we try to clear some areas in people's homes in which we can prepare food and fluid in a safe environment. Because we're dealing with food, we appreciate that comes with different allergens, and different age groups will have different allergen types. And again, it's important that you do your first aid training and you know how to deal with the anaphylactic signs and symptoms of people going into shock. It may cause things such as diarrhea and vomiting and other things. So it's important we're aware of our customers' allergens when providing food. But equally, these foods are also seen as high-risk foods. So we know things such as eggs can have salmonella, fish can turn quite quickly, and again going down to other things. So we want to try and avoid any high-risk foods with high-risk groups as much as possible. Like all the other things we've spoken about, we have policies and procedures. So it's your responsibility to read your local policy. This is around your legislation. And places to go for that is on the Environmental Health Food Safety website. You'll see lots of information there. You should have your training, you should know how to report, and you should know who your experts are to talk to. Equally, we need to have some procedures. And let's think about our own homes. When we go shopping, we know how long food is being kept out of temperatures and in cars for. If people are doing shopping for our customers, we don't know how long that food is out of temperature for. So it's important that if we do shopping for people, we maintain the same practices we would for ourselves. So we would do all our grocery shopping first, we would put all our frozen food together to maintain the temperature of the food. But ideally now, do we need to be shopping for people, or should we be using home delivery services to try and reduce the cross-infection of food and to make sure that food is delivered at the right temperature? The reality is, under food, there's a process called HACCPs, which stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. It's basically an assessment tool for food. It goes back to where food is originated from, and it looks at all of the people that's involved in that food, right up to the moment it's cooked. So we need to ensure that actually everyone is doing their bit in keeping that food at the right temperature and has followed the same procedures as you will towards the end. When we store the foods, we need to make sure that we're storing things at the right temperatures. So if they're ambient, they're being kept on shelves. And again, if they're chilled items, they're kept in fridges. The rule of thumb is everybody has different ideas about where things should be kept. So eggs for the last decade have gone in and out of fridges like a yo-yo. Creams and sauces go in and out of fridges like a yo-yo. The rule of thumb is wherever you buy it from in a supermarket is normally how it should be stored in your own home. However, once things are opened, it may change because of the air getting into the jars, because maybe there's some preserve thing going on there. So if it's then opened, follow the instructions on the back. Most sauces, such as ketchups and mayonnaises, will have a certain amount of time once they're opened. So once they're opened, we should be writing a date on them so we know when they're due to be put in the bin. Preparation of food. So again, we know some foods come in dry packages, some foods are preserved through salting, and some through sugar. So again, we should know how to prepare food and cook it. And then finally, in people's homes, who's responsible for cleaning the fridges and the cookers and the other areas. Because food hygiene involves us preparing food, it's important that we wash our hands properly and effectively. And again, we've done this in other videos. So we put the water in, we go to the backs, we shuffle, we go round, we finish, and we go round the wrists. And we should be drying our hands with the one tap technique. When we clean, it's important we clean properly. So we normally remove the debris first with detergents. We then will disinfect the area in which we've wiped, and sometimes we'll use the antibacterial cleaners, which we spray and they just air dry, so we don't re-wipe. However, saying that, if you haven't got any of these and we've run out of disinfectants and we've run out of cleaners, our good old friend boiling water is fine. Because we know viruses and bacteria don't do typically well in hot water, and hot water normally kills them. So let's think about food storage and cooking. Fridges need to be between 1 and 4 Celsius. So we know if a bacteria is in the danger zone, so it's in the normal room temperatures, within 20 minutes, it can become harmful to eat. In a fridge or a freezer, it basically, imagine I'm a bacteria and I'm about to multiply. What the fridge does is it stops me multiplying, so I almost put a coat on because I'm cold. And that stops me multiplying, so it keeps the bacteria to a safe level. So if the fridge is above 4 Celsius and it's going into room temperature into the danger zone, the bacteria is going to start multiplying. So it's important we do fridge temperature checks to make sure the fridge is working, and they should be done daily. To the freezer, it should be below 18 and 25, and again, we know when bacteria is at this level, it remains very much dormant, so it's fast asleep. So it's important to realise temperatures must be maintained. So if we're thinking about defrosting food, or we've got frozen things, we would take it out the freezer and we would put it in the fridge on a lower shelf so it doesn't drip everywhere. Again, in fridges, we would have our cooked meats at the top, our raw meats at the bottom, so they're nicely separated and we don't have anything dripping on top of each other. So if it's cooked, then there shouldn't be any blood in it, it should be fine, where raw meats and things should be down at the bottom. So it's important you know how to store your items, it's important you know how to do your shopping. We should be using home food delivery services where we can. Canned food is absolutely fine because we know it's been preserved and generally should be good. Fruit and vegetables, we need to be checking that they're fresh and they're not spoilt and there's no mould on them. And we need to be checking our fridges and freezers. Now, one of the things we haven't got on here is about our use by dates and best before dates. So again, it's important that we check the dates on items because this is people's homes that you're caring for. A best before date is only a government advisory date. What it basically means is it's safe to eat, but they can't guarantee the quality of the food. If it's a use by date, then we mustn't use it after that date because it's harmful. When we're cooking, it's really important that we follow the cooking instructions. We preheat the ovens, we cook foods, cooking different foods in different ways. It's important that we know the method of cooking. If we reheat the food, you're aware of the temperatures to reheat to. And again, if you're microwaving food, make sure that you cover it up with cling film to stop it splattering all over the microwave and causing further problems. So if we're cooking food for the first time, the core temperature of that food needs to be around 72, 75, and it needs to be a holding temperature for 2 minutes. If we're reheating food, we should be reheating that at 85 Celsius for 2 minutes. We would never reheat things such as rice or anything that's starchy because again, the pathogens on there can accelerate and it can become a little bit slimy and those can be quite harmful to people. So to conclude, we've run through some of the legislation, again, such as the Food Safety Act, Health and Safety at Work Act, Infection Control, Widger on Cosh. We've looked at some of the hazards that are typical in people's homes, such as dirty tea towels, dirty dishcloths, and plants and things all over the place. We're able to define how food poisoning is caused, so not cooking things properly, not having things at the right holding temperature, not having things stored correctly, and not having things delivered timely. We understand basic hygiene, why they're important, because again we want to protect the vulnerable groups and make sure that we maintain good food hygiene principles. We need to know some of the techniques of when to use them, so washing your hands and cleaning and decontaminating. So we know that we should be cleaning first, then disinfecting, then sanitising. Again, if we're washing up, we should be removing the food waste, pre-rinsing, disinfecting, leaving it to drip dry. And again, even when I've washed up, I tend to pour hot water over things just to give it a final rinse. We should know how to store correctly in fridges and freezers. Things should be wrapped up. If we open items, we should put the date open on it so people are aware of when things are opened. And we should know how to cook, prepare food safely. So we should be able to follow the cooking instructions. So please make sure that you do follow good food hygiene principles in people's homes. It is important to understand it is their home, and it makes it a little bit more challenging for us as carers because we have to work in a way which promotes their independence and supports them. But it's the same principles we would carry in our own home, making sure that things are clean and making sure that we decontaminate properly. If you need further information, by all means, you can go on to the Environmental Health website. You can look on your company's own website for policies and procedures, and again, it should be available for you to download if you need that too. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you need any further help, come and talk to your care coordinators.